Hey folks, thanks for joining me. If you're here, you're probably interested in finding out how to get rid of a lot of the moisture out of your worm beds, or at least keep it to acceptable levels, while at the same time boosting the biology, allowing air gaps to be down at the bottom of your bins. Air, less moisture. The worms need moisture, they need air. I want to show you something. You're going to see this coming up later on in the video, but that's biochar. And using that biochar is a key ingredient in what we're going to do. One of the other key ingredients, yep, toilet paper roll. Stick around, watch how we do this. Okay, what we've got here is a bag of my previously frozen greens. And we're going to place them in the colander into a bowl, and we're going to let them thaw. Okay, so after about a 3-hour time lapse condensed down to whatever I condensed it down to, this is what we're left with. It was about 3 pounds of lettuce, shredded lettuce, that I actually had to leave out overnight. This is the next day from that time lapse. But now we're going to get to the fun stuff. So we started out with this, which is about, I'm going to say, about a 3-pound bag of shredded lettuce, frozen, and that eventually turned into this. Now, I can pretty much take that 3-pound bag and hold it in one hand. This is the moisture that came out of that. Now, if you'd have just put this into your bin without being frozen, without draining, that is all of the water that would have ended up in your bin. Not bad, not that that's a bad thing, but what freezing it and then letting it thaw and draining it out does is breaks down the cell walls of the lettuce, the water released, and you're not adding all of that water into your worm bin. So I got to thinking, why don't we weigh out what the raw lettuce weighs and weigh out what the frozen lettuce that's been thawed and all the water drains out, and see what they come out to. I can kind of guess a little bit by hand what they weigh, but since we're doing this, let's do this. You know what? Probably just would have been easier to do it that way. Same bags. Don't want to lose any. Okay. So let's weigh this exact same bag. See what it says. I'm not sure you can see that on the camera, but 2.27 pounds. That is just freshly shredded lettuce. freshly shredded lettuce, same size, drained. Not even a pound, 14.4 ounces. So, well, it's quite a bit of water that came out of there that won't be going into your worm bin to make it moister. So now you're going to see this in another video that's coming up shortly about one of the other ways I use to not make my bins that moist and supercharge their nutrition, which is what this channel is pretty much about, worm nutrition. Okay, so we've got 2 of the parts of this project put together. We've got 2 more to go. You know, sometimes I feel like a chef when I'm feeding my worms. I really like to give them the best nutrition possible. You don't have to go through all of this, but let me show you what I got right here. A couple of things I added. That is probably a terrible shadow, but that is some of my cow siftings and worm castings. And both of those are huge with the microbes and the biology. I mean, that lettuce is definitely blooming. The biochar is going to collect all of that and hold it. The biochar is also going to collect the oxygen and all the minerals that it contains naturally. Now I'm going to let that biochar sit overnight and get to worm temperature, get to room temperature along with everything else. Oh, and here are the stars of the show. Toilet paper rolls. Let's see what happens next. Okay, let's get down to the main goal of this whole video, and that is to create worm food burritos with a supercharge. We've got our lettuce, kale, spinach, greens that have been frozen, thawed, drained. We're going to put them in first. Then we're going to take our cow manure squeezings and about a handful, good-sized handful of castings. And we're going to just mix them right in there with it. And then the main point of what I made this video about is how to use this biochar to essentially make gaps, make holes in our burrito so that when the worms get in to get this and the poops and the castings, they're actually going to squeeze this down. It's going to fall down, but the big chunks of the biochar are going to leave air pockets. One of the reasons that I really start using the biochar now, especially on new bins, is that in 3 months, when I go to start using it in my gardens, my plants, is that all this biochar will be fully inoculated, and I can just take the castings that's going to contain this biochar, and it's going to go directly into the garden. Now, one of the other neat things that I found about the biochar is, yeah, you look at it, it's big, it's thick. By the time I use this, a lot of this is going to be broken down into extremely small pieces. The worms will, they don't have teeth, but they will gnaw on it to get the bacteria out, because each one of these little pieces of biochar is going to contain billions of microbes. It's like they equate it to being like a condominium for microbiology. So once we get this pretty well mixed, don't have to go overboard. Okay, again, I feel like a chef. Then comes the fun part. We're going to basically just stuff these. can see there's still quite a bit of moisture in here. That moisture is going to help to, it's going to saturate this cardboard. And the worms are going to be able to not only go in from the inside, but in from the outside. All right. That is a perfect worm burrito. We're going to see at the end of this, well, in the next video, I'm actually going to show you how I use these in the worm bin itself. And what I'm going to do is to take one of my bins that a little bit moist on the bottom, not overly moist. I mean, it's like right where I like it. But if I keep going with it, it's going to get real moist. So I'm going to fluff the bin up, mix it all up, stir it up. And I'm going to show you how I put these at the bottom. Remember how I said over time, these are going to, after the worms have eaten all the lettuces and all the good stuff out of there, it's going to collapse. But because the biochar is thick, it's going to leave air gaps in there. And that air, well, not only does it help the worms, to breathe, but it helps to keep the bottom of it from going anaerobic without oxygen. Oxygen is still going to be down inside of there, as well as about 30 billion microbes living in the biochar. Now, whatever I have left over in here, well, actually, I'll probably just go grab a couple more tubes, but for now, for the bin that I'm going to be putting these in, I need 4. And this will be 4. I don't know about you, but there's something, I don't know, satisfying kind of like about doing this. I know I'm giving my worms the best nutrition they can possibly get. I know the castings that are going to come out of this, I know they're going to be fantastic. So, yeah, it's dirty work, but I think it's worth it. Right. So that's 4. And that pretty much wraps up this video. Kind of an overview of what we did. We took lettuce that I cut up, put it into bags, froze it, took it out of the freezer, put it in a strainer and strained it, let it thaw, and all the water came out. We probably got almost at least a cup and a half, almost 2 cups of water out of that lettuce that would have otherwise gone straight into your bin if we'd have just put it in the way that it was. So we took out a lot of the moisture. Also, the freezing and the thawing breaks down the cell walls, making it easier for the bacteria to get to it, start doing their work, thus making it easier for the worms to get to it and do the work we want them to do, making perfect nutrition from their castings for our plants. Okay, guys, thank you very much. If you like this kind of thing, and I plan on doing a lot more videos like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, give me a like, and stay tuned for the next video where I actually put these into a bin. I'll show you how I do that. Okay, we've got the star of the show here, our little worm food burritos. And we've got a bin that I need to fluff up. It's getting a little, well, it's been almost a month since I harvested this, all the castings out. I did add, that pumpkin's gone. We're going to take this and move it out of the way. But what we're going to do today to make it good for these worm food burritos containing biochar is we're just going to mix these guys up. Now, this is not something I do often, but I think this guy is about ready for it. This bin, while it's not overly moist, I'm going to add some oxygen and some more biology and inoculate that biochar by turning this and adding these little worm food burritos. Is that a terrible accent? What I'm going to kind of do, put them right down on the bottom. And then just simply cover them back up. I know you worms are not real happy with me doing this right now, but you'll get it. You'll get it in a little bit. There's a lot of long-term food in here. Not fast food. More like your steak and potatoes. Steak and potatoes. You know, it's amazing how they actually dig into that. It was a pumpkin stem. They're working it. You can tell a lot of this is castings, but it's not. Like I said, I only did this a couple of weeks ago. But this is how fast they break down the leaves. I've really gone more into using leaves rather than paper or cardboard. I noticed that my castings come out a lot darker. They just look healthier. And well, that's the thing. Good nutrition, healthy worms, good castings. Right now, by kind of stirring this all up, I'm adding a lot of oxygen into there too. I'm also making a bunch of worms probably really angry. What are you doing? They'll get over it. They'll figure it out. And speaking of leaves, you know what? First, we're going to give them today's feeding day. But because I'm turning these guys and adding the burritos for food, I'm just going to give them some worm chow. I'll be doing a video on how I make my worm chow. It's really no different than how anybody else is doing it. Give them some coffee. Coffee actually helps to absorb a lot of the moisture. Now, sneak peek, my next video is going to be a tip on how to make your coffee grounds more available to the worms right away. Because, you know, when you get your coffee grounds, whether they be from your own coffee maker or your local coffee shop, those coffee grounds are pretty much sterile. They've been through a high heat process, and which takes out a lot of the acidity and the caffeine and all that. But they're pretty much sterile. And if you just put the fresh grounds in there, not the fresh, the used grounds, the worms kind of ignore it for quite a while. But there's a trick, and I'm going to show you what I do. Sticks, fungi on it, perfect. I'm going to show you what I do to my coffee grounds to make it to make them viable and obtainable and usable by the worms almost immediately. Here's an old coffee filter with a worm on it. I'm fortunate enough to live by the ocean, and I get a lot of the quahog shells, any kind of shells. And a lot of times I'll just put a whole one in. And you always find a worm up underneath there. I mean, I'm not sure if the bacteria eat that. I'm not sure if the worms eat that. Well, yeah, actually, I'm pretty sure they do. But talk about slow food. But I think any kind of additive variety that you can add to the worm bin is a good thing. Now, because those are dry leaves, we are going to give them a spray down. I know if I was a worm, I wouldn't want to be crawling around on dry, crunchy leaves. Okay, I'm sure I missed something about what I wanted to talk about in this video, but I think for now, that's the thing. What those little worm food burritos are going to do in there is as the worms eat that food out, they're going to collapse, but they're only going to collapse to the portion to where that biochar is holding them up. And that's going to leave air pockets way down at the bottom. That's going to allow your worms to move in, move around. The biochar is going to allow the bacteria a place to live and reproduce and make more bacteria for your worms and for breaking down the other foods that you put in. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it. Seriously, give it a try. Now, do I go overboard? Do I do too much? Probably. But you know what? I love my worms. And I love the fact that I can help them to make the best worm castings for my gardens. Like, subscribe. Next video coming up is going to be my little tips and trick on how to make your coffee grounds better, more available to the worms immediately. And then the one after that is going to be a complete reset where I use the worm food burritos to start the bin. Well, actually, a reset of the bin to refresh a bin that I harvest. I hope that made sense. Anyway, thanks for watching. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.